Hole in My Life, Chapter 2, Misfit. I was 19, still stuck in high school, and I wasn't living at home. I had unlimited freedom, no supervision whatsoever. I had spending money, I had a fast car, I had a fake ID. My entire year was a grand balancing act between doing what I wanted and doing what I should, and being who I was, while inventing who I wanted to be. A writer with something important to say. During my junior year, my parents had moved the family from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to San Juan, Puerto Rico. My dad, who had a lifelong habit of switching jobs almost every year, took a position as a construction superintendent, rebuilding a beachfront hotel and casino. My mom and my older sister were all for it. My younger brothers were ready to live like surfer boys. It sounded like a big party to me. I turned in my books, packed my bags, and said farewell to my few friends and teachers at Sunrise High School without shedding a tear. Since I had already gone to 9 different schools, I was skilled at being professional acquaintance. I didn't have a problem with saying goodbye to old friends and walking away forever. On the plane down to Puerto Rico, I figured I would never see them again. I'm sure they thought the same of me. New friends were always around the corner. I didn't speak Spanish, so I couldn't go to the public schools in San Juan, and since my parents didn't have enough money for a private school, we decided it would be best for me to just go to work. My dad fixed me up with the electrical subcontractor on his construction project, and right away I found myself wiring hotel rooms. The money was good. Half of the existing hotel was shut down while we added 2 new floors. A lot of the workers were from the States, and one of the perks of the job was that they were given hotel rooms to live in. I was too. This was ideal. I had privacy, I had my own TV, I even had maid service. Didn't have to make a bed or pick a wet towel off the floor for half a year. Plus my parents lived in an apartment a block away. Each evening, after I showered in my hotel room, I would carry my dirty laundry down the street where I joined the family for dinner. Afterward, I would go back to the hotel with clean laundry and play cards with the other electrical workers who lived down the hall. They were nice older guys who flew from Miami every week to make fast money working double shifts. They let me drink a little, but not too much. And they let me lose a little, but not too much. On the weekends, they would fly home and I would drink a little too much and wander around the tourist zones. I would go to the casinos at the El San Juan and Americana. I would imagine I was James Bond, meeting beautiful older women at the roulette tables and walking arm in arm up to their rooms where something dangerously exotic might happen. But the only arm I managed to warm up was on the slot machines. I loved playing them. The flashing lights and the sound of the gears spinning and wild thrill of the jingling coins pouring into the metal tray and waitress dressed in skimpy outfits bringing me free drinks for good tips was a blast. And if I lost too much, I would hop up and walk for an hour down the beach and look out at the stars and listen to the surf and inhale the whole world's briny smell rising from the ocean I loved. Then it never felt as if I had lost. And once, I had won so much I stood on the beach in the moonlight, skipping silver quarters across the calm water as the little waves pawed the shore. But after a while, I began to think of school again. Besides, I knew nothing about electricity and nearly electrocuted myself several times. After I had melted my third pair of Klein side cutters and scorched a number of body parts while working on live wires, I admitted that electrical work was not in my future, and I made the decision to get my high school diploma. After 6 months on the job, I had saved enough money to afford a private school, but I couldn't get in. My grades had always been mediocre, and given that I had never finished 11th grade, the private schools in San Juan wouldn't accept me as a senior. The thought of repeating 11th grade was too depressing. I talked to my parents and they arranged for me to return to my cast off school back in Florida and live with a family who had an extra room. My parents thought this was the best opportunity for me. I had saved my savings and had never been much trouble, so they must have reasoned it was an opportunity for me to spread my wings and make something for myself. I packed my bags, said goodbye to my family, and returned to Fort Lauderdale. When I re enrolled as a senior at Sunrise High, no one asked about the second half of my junior year, and I didn't volunteer any information. It turned out that the people my dad arranged for me to live with, the Bacon family, were desperate for extra cash. My dad had met Fred Bacon while at the Elks Club benefit to help needy kids. The Bacons had purchased a new house with a swimming pool, had two new cars, and were raising two preschool kids, all on an income selling mail order prosthetic limbs out of their garage, which looked like a morgue of plastic parts. Mr. and Mrs. Bacon had limb disabilities themselves, he with a missing arm and she without a left foot, and so were well suited for their business. "Can't make a dime," Mr. Bacon said one night after a few beers. He yanked off his flexible rubber arm and waved it overhead like a giant bug antenna. "All these old people come down here with prosthetics that look like something whittled out of the baseball bat. You would think they would want something snazzy looking, but no. They're just happy to be alive. In the meantime, we are starving." So my rental money was welcome. Plus, with my new grocery store job at Winn-Dixie, I was always bringing home bags full of dented cans, crushed boxes of cereals, half-open packages of dry beans and rice, and frozen food with freezer burn. The Bacon family didn't mind the Misfit food, but soon they found out I was the greater Misfit. It took them about 6 weeks to realize I was a live-in party crasher. After having my own hotel room in San Juan, I wasn't ready to live with other people. I would go out drinking with my friend Will Doyle, and afterward I would come home late and play my stereo at full volume, smell up the house with cigarette smoke, and make long-distance phone calls on the Bacon's bill. I kept drinking more and more until I discovered I could drink lots of beer, nearly a case of it in a sitting. Unfortunately, I was also in the process of discovering I had no tolerance for that much alcohol, and I always became blind drunk and ferociously ill, spending almost every night loudly heaving my guts out in the toilet while begging God for mercy. I was a mess. After one especially robust night of drinking with Will, I stumbled home, crawled up the sidewalk, stabbed my key in the front door, let myself in, and power burst all over the living room. After I sloshed blindly through the mess on all fours, I splattered the bathroom, my bedroom, the bathroom again, my bedroom again, until I passed out in the bathroom with my arms draped around the toilet and my head on the cool rim of the bowl. When I came to the next afternoon, after the carpet cleaners had finished their work, I was summoned into the kitchen, which had been closed off with plastic sheetings and heavily sprayed with institutional strength air freshener. I was promptly informed that I had to pack my bags and be out of their lives in 1 hour. Mr. Bacon tapped on the face of his watch with his flexible prosthetic finger to show that he was business. He meant business. I didn't evade their judgment of me as an immature, spoiled brat who needed a major butt kicking in order to straighten up. I didn't have time to defend myself. I suddenly felt sick all over again. "Excuse me?" I blenched and quickly covered my mouth with both hands, nodded my agreement, to their assessment of my character and ran down the hall to the bathroom. Mrs. Bacon limped behind me, yelling, "Don't you dare soil my carpet again!" I didn't, but I threw up something so harshly acidic it left me with canker sores on the inside of my mouth. As I stumbled out of the house, Mr. Bacon hollered out one final warning: "Keep this up and you will fall flat on your ass." I spit up on the grass. I spent the night in my car, parked next to the dumpster behind the grocery store. For a short while, I felt sorry for myself, and then figured my drinking was a sign that I was living in the wrong place, with the wrong sort of people. There was no promise of anything in the Bacon family. The wife kept the kids in front of the TV all day while she was vacantly dozed across the couch. If they acted up, she would swing at them with her cane. The husband was constantly worried about money and kept reminding me not to use too much electricity. He was so cheap, he turned the hot water heater down too tepid. Even I knew enough to understand what Buddha meant when he said, "Always walk the road of happiness to prosperity." They seemed miserable and loveless. Nothing gave them pleasure because they were unable to receive it. And there I was, full of promise and hope and desire for real love and real events to shape and change my life. I knew I was free to change myself, free to feel the entire impact of what I was doing. And I wanted to feel it all. Being in that house was spoiling the hope of what life should offer. They were trapped and tapped out of ideas and cash and just waiting to collapse. And I was glad I wouldn't be around to watch it all happen. Still, I knew something had to be gone wrong with me, too. You just didn't end up homeless, hungover, slipping in with your car, with all your worldly possessions, because you had control of your life. I had lost control, temporarily. But I would get it back, I figured. I always did. My family had highs and lows, made money and lost what money can buy, had good days and days that were ground out like cigarette butts. So I was used to hitting the bottom. Now I was waiting for the bounce. By the time I fell asleep across my suitcases, I only felt sorry for the Bacon kids. In the morning, I woke up feeling pasty. My skin was like marzipan. I had slept with the windows rolled up and all that drinking had run me down. I bought a newspaper and a coffee and looked through the rooms to rent section. I spotted a promising ad and drove over to an address on North Broward Boulevard. It was an old motel whose sun-faded sign barely read "The King's Court." The sign was rimmed with broken bulbs that looked like rotten teeth. I rang the office buzzer, and an old woman with brown wrinkled skin like a well-used pirate map opened the door and flicked a cigarette butt over my head. "Does the name Davy Crockett mean anything to you?" she asked. "Yeah, he was king of the wild frontier," I said, quoting the theme song from the TV show. "Well, he was the king of the frontier," she said. Then, pointing at her chest, added, "And I am the queen of King's Court. I am Davy Crockett the Fourth, his great-great-granddaughter." "Great," I said, thinking she looked old enough to be his daughter, but I liked her right off because she was the opposite of what I just left. "Now, what can I do for you?" she asked. "I need a room," I said. "Cash or welfare check?" "Cash," I replied. "Good. Pay in advance and you will get a 10% discount." I paid, and Debbie's kin gave me the key to room number 3. "It's a lucky room," she informed me. "To my knowledge, no one has died in it." "I'll try to keep it that way," I replied and turned to go. "One more thing. Don't make any trouble, or I'll have to kick your tail out of here with Debbie's moccasins." I stared at her feet. Her beaded bucksins looked real to me. "And I got his gun," she informed. "All a Betsy." "Not to worry," I said, smiling. Honest, I'm a good kid. I moved my car around to the parking space with the big 3 painted on it. I unlocked the shiny brown door and in a glance saw it all. A ragtag furnished room with a tiny bathroom and shallow closet. A low slung unmade bed took the middle of the room. Musty smelling sheets were folded over an exhausted pillow. It was hot. There was no air conditioning. Against a filthy wall was a dresser with a cheap lamp on it, and a cheaper fan. I turned the fan on and unpacked my belongings. I hung my shirts and pants on hangers. I placed my toiletries on a glass shelf above the sink. I pushed back the yellow shower curtain. The stale air trapped there smelled like a mildewed lemon. I put my shampoo on the edge of the tub. The wall tiles were yellow. The floors were yellow. I looked in the mirror. I was yellow. It was a color that did not look good on me. I went back to the main room, pulled a chair over to the side of the bed, and stacked all my books on it. Then I sat down on the other chair. I suddenly felt drained, utterly exhausted, and held my head in my hands. My spirit was as beat as my body was tired. I had been reading Frank Corney's Stop Time. He had written about growing up in Florida. There was a passage about him dozing off and on all day in a backyard doghouse, like a panting animal in the heat. He was hiding from everyone, especially himself. I recognized that feeling. As much as I disliked the Bacons, I couldn't blame them for everything. There was absolutely nothing I could think to do that was good for me at that moment. I didn't have any plans, no big ideas, no hopes, no dreams. I was beat inside and out. I couldn't even make the bed or take a shower. Instead, I reached into my book bag, removed a pack of cigarettes, lit one, and exhaled. The fan bullied the smoke out of the side window. I tried to fool myself into thinking that smoking was actually doing something, as if the smoke rising from my mouth was evidence of a churning industry that thrived inside me. But smoking wasn't doing any more than providing a physical activity that masked the emptiness behind it. I could blame the hollow feeling inside me on the hangover. But when the hangover passed, I knew I would still sense that same barren internal landscape. I needed to settle down and build a life for myself. For all I could tell, the King's Court was going to be where I planted my flag. Well, I thought, trying to lift my spirits, I'm not off to a good start, but I should be merciful enough to give myself a second chance. After all, I figured I'd soon be saying the same thing to my parents. I looked at my watch. It was time to get ready for work. Thank God for work, I thought. As I stood headed for the shower, I felt a little bounce in my step. I think I am on an upswing, I said it aloud, and I was.